Even with Fail as his anchor, Perrin Ibarra carried a battle no one else could see. A quiet, constant war in his mind between the man he was and the wolf he feared becoming. The Wolf Brother's gift was never just a power. It was a dilemma, one that gnawed at him even on the calmest days in the Two Rivers. His connection to the wolves ran deeper than words. He could feel their hunger, their joy, their fear as if they were his own. And that closeness threatened to blur the line between his humanity and his animal instincts. In the Great Hunt, when he first ran with Hopper in the pack through the wolf dream, he felt a freedom he'd never known. The wind in his fur, not his hair. The thrill of the chase. The unity of belonging to something larger than himself. But when he woke, he stared at his hands, calloused from blacksmithing, not claws, and trembled. He feared that if he let himself sink too deep into that world, he'd forget how to speak like a man, how to feel like a man. Hopper tried to reassure him, growling, "You are young bull, not wolf, but wolf is not less than man." But Perrin couldn't shake the doubt. He avoided the wolf dream for days, even when it meant missing warnings of Trolloc raids, because the alternative, losing himself, felt worse. The struggle wasn't about controlling the wolves. It was about controlling himself, about holding on to the parts of him that loved the forge, that laughed with Fail, that grieved for the dead. It was a battle he fought every time he heard a wolf howl at night, every time he felt the urge to run instead of stand and lead. That struggle was made heavier by the gold of his eyes, the mark of his wolf brother's gift, a burden that turned him into a stranger to even the people who loved him. His golden eyes were a weapon, yes. They let him see in the dark during Trolloc attacks, let him sense danger before it came, let him communicate with the wolves who became his silent allies in defense of the Two Rivers. In Lord of Chaos, when Shaido Aiel snuck toward Emond's field under cover of night, Perrin's golden eyes picked up their movement before any guard's torch could, and his wolf contacts warned him of their numbers. He turned a surprise attack into a victory because of that gift. But those same eyes were a curse. The White Cloaks called him a dark friend's spawn, pointing to his golden eyes as proof of corruption. Even some Two Rivers villagers flinched when he looked at them, whispering that he was touched by the Dark One. He tried to hide it once, wearing a hood pulled low over his face when he visited Berlon, but the disguise only made people more suspicious. The golden eyes set him apart in a way no axe or title ever could. They made him feel like an outsider in his own home. Fail told him his eyes were beautiful, like sunlight on honey, but even her words couldn't erase the way others looked at him. The gift that kept his pack safe also made him lonely, because no one else could see the world through his eyes. No one else could understand the weight of hearing wolves' thoughts in the quiet of the night. That loneliness deepened with the price of his power. The sacrifices he had to make, the hard choices that left him awake at night, the isolation of leading a group that could never fully know him. Perrin's power as a wolf brother didn't just let him protect the Two Rivers, it forced him to make choices no one else could. In A Memory of Light, before the last battle, he had to decide whether to bring the wolves into the fight. He knew their strength would turn the tide against the Dark One's forces, but he also knew many would die. Wolves he'd grown to care for, wolves who'd called him Young Bull. He sat in the Westwood for hours, talking to the pack's new leader, a she-wolf named Dapple, and he cried when he asked for their help. "I don't want to send you to die," he said. Dapple nuzzled his hand and growled, "We fight for the pack, your pack, our pack." It was a choice that haunted him, even after the battle was won. He also faced isolation in leading the disparate groups that looked to him. Two Rivers farmers who feared the wolves, wolves who didn't understand human rules, aiel warriors who respected strength but questioned his hesitation. He was always the bridge between them, always the one who had to translate one side's fears to the other. After the last battle, when the villagers celebrated, he slipped away to the Westwood to sit with the remaining wolves. Fail found him there, and she didn't ask him to come back. She sat with him in silence. She knew that the price of his power was a loneliness no one else could ease, a loneliness that came from being both man and wolf, both leader and outsider. The Wolf Brothers' dilemma was never just about power and responsibility. It was about being two things at once: a man who loved the quiet of the forge, and a wolf who craved the freedom of the hunt. a leader who wanted to protect everyone, and a person who just wanted to be understood. Perrin never fully solved that dilemma. He never stopped fearing the wolf in him, never stopped grieving the sacrifices his power demanded. But he learned to live with it, to balance the two parts of himself like he balanced his axe and his hammer. He learned that power wasn't just about what you could do, it was about what you chose to protect, and who you chose to let in. The wolves were his strength, his golden eyes, his burden, his loneliness, his cross. But with Fail by his side, and the two rivers as his pack, he carried them all. He was never just a wolf brother, never just a lord, never just a blacksmith. He was Perrin Aibara. And that, in the end, was enough. Perrin's struggle with his wolf brother's gift and his title had always felt like two halves of a cracked hammer, useful, but never quite whole. But after the last battle, as he stood in the ashes of Emmonsfield's old blacksmith shop, watching villagers rebuild what the Dark One's forces had broken, he felt those halves click together. He no longer flinched when a farmer called him Lord Aibara. He nodded, asked about the farmer's crops, and knelt to help stack lumber. This was the merging of identities he'd fought for so long. The blacksmith's hands, the wolf brother's eyes, the lord's responsibility, all finally working as one. In a memory of light, after the fighting ended, he gathered the two rivers' leaders, not in a grand hall, but in the Wine Spring Inn's common room, the same place he'd drunk ale with Rand and Matt as a boy. "I'm not asking you to follow me because I'm a lord," he said, his golden eyes soft but steady. "I'm asking you to work with me because we're family." That day he accepted the title not as a chain, but as a tool, something to use to protect the people he loved, not something to fear. He'd once hated the idea of being Lord of the Two Rivers. Now he saw it as an extension of who he was, the boy who'd picked up an axe to save his friends, the wolf brother who'd listened to the pack, the husband who'd fought to get Fail back. All of it had led to this moment of acceptance, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was wearing someone else's skin. With that acceptance came a leadership style as unique as his golden eyes, one that stood apart from Rand's cosmic burden and Matt's roguish cleverness. Rand led with the weight of prophecy, a figure of legend who fought to save the world. Matt led with quick wits and luck, a general who turned chaos into victory. Perrin led with presence. He didn't give rousing speeches or devise grand strategies. He showed up. When a storm destroyed the village's grain stores, he spent 3 days helping rebuild. His hands blistered from hauling wood and stacking sacks. When two families argued over a well that had dried up, he didn't pick a side. He sat with them at dawn, listened to their stories of how the well had fed their ancestors, and helped them dig a new one together. In the fires of heaven, he'd learned that leadership wasn't about giving orders. It was about being the first to lift the hammer, the last to eat a meal, the one who remembered everyone's name. He also leaned into his wolf brother's gift, turning what had once been a curse into a bridge. He invited young wolf brothers from nearby villages to Iman's field, teaching them to control their instincts and teaching the Two Rivers people to trust them. "They're not monsters," he told a group of fearful farmers, standing beside a boy with golden eyes like his. "They're just like us, trying to protect their families." This was his unique path, leadership rooted in empathy, not authority, in connection, not distance. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. The Two Rivers didn't follow him because they had to. They followed him because they knew he'd never asked them to do something he wouldn't do himself. That style would shape the Two Rivers' future in the post. Last battle world, turning the small village into a beacon of stability in a broken land. Perrin didn't want to expand or conquer. He wanted to build a place where people could live like they had before the Trollocs came. Quietly, safely, with the rhythm of seasons and the comfort of community. He rebuilt the blacksmith shop, hiring a young apprentice to teach the trade, so no one would forget the skills that had once defined him. He worked with Aes Sedai to set up a school, where children learned to read and write and also learned to listen to the wolves, to sense danger before it came. He even negotiated a truce with the White Cloaks, not through threats, but by inviting their leader to Iman's field for a meal, showing him the village's gardens and the children playing in the square. "We're not dark friends," he said. "We're just people trying to live." The truce held, and soon travelers from other villages began coming to the Two Rivers, for safety, for food, for the hope that Perrin's leadership offered. In time, Eamon's field grew, but it never lost its heart. The Wine Spring Inn still served ale, the blacksmith's hammer still rang at dawn, and Perrin still walked the streets at dusk, stopping to chat with villagers and scratch the ears of the wolves that had become his silent companions. Perrin Ibarra had never wanted to be a lord. He'd never wanted golden eyes or a connection to wolves or the weight of a village's trust. But in embracing his destiny, he'd become more than a lord. He'd become the keeper of the Two Rivers' soul. The Lord of the Golden Eyes wasn't a title he'd sought. It was a promise he'd kept. A promise to protect his pack, to honor his roots, to turn fear into trust. And in that promise, the Two Rivers found a future worth fighting for. A future where the quiet strength of a former blacksmith would outlast the legends of heroes. For Perrin, that was enough. He'd finally found his place, not as a wolf, not as a lord, but as Perrin husband, friend, protector, and the heart of the Two Rivers. And in that, he'd found peace.